I'm Linda Hirsch.
And I'm Jim Carney. And this is EdCast, a program created and produced by educators for everyone interested in education.
In New York City, the number of homes speaking a language other than English continues to increase. Learning English is crucial to the educational and professional success of the city's immigrants. Today we explore the challenges and successes of learning English as we welcome the 2010 New York Times English to Speakers of Other Languages Teacher of the Year, Meg Frost. Professor Gail August of Hostos Community College will also join us to offer insights on the ways that students learn the English they need to succeed in college.
At a gala reception at the New York Times recently, a total of 5 instructors were honored for their ESOL work. New York Times Executive Director for Education, Felice Noodleman, explained how the honorees were chosen.
Well, this is an exciting award for us. This is the 4th year that we've been able to honor teachers of ESOL. And it's an important program. It certainly is. The ESOL population, the immigrant population in New York, is a really key component of the economic and social capital of this city. It's an important population to recognize and to honor the work that is being done in this area.
What was the criteria that was used to select the teachers that were chosen?
Well, they have to really be a teacher of excellence, and so they have to be able to, one, know their field and excel within the ESOL field. That means they have to know their subject area, they have to know the best practices, they have to develop outstanding and excellent pedagogy, and they have to meet student needs. And the other is that we found that all of these teachers are truly beloved by their students. They're respected, they're appreciated, and their work really shows in the outcomes that they achieve.
The group that you selected is a very diverse group of teachers, aren't they?
Very much so. Not one, they come from all different areas and backgrounds and areas of the city, but they really are diverse culturally also. And that reflects the population of New York and the demographics of the city.
Later in the program, I'll talk to the honorees about their work. But now to Linda in the studio with her guests.
My guest today is Meg Frost, the 2010 New York Times ESL Teacher of the Year. Welcome to EdCast and congratulations on your honor.
Thank you so much, Linda.
Tell us a little bit about how you became a teacher of English to speakers of other languages.
Okay. My first experience teaching was in Namibia with an organization called World Teach. And I enjoyed my time there so much that I decided to pursue teaching English abroad. So I went to South Korea for a year, and upon coming back from South Korea, I started looking for jobs teaching and landed with opportunities for a better tomorrow, and I found such a welcoming, warm community in the classroom, and I found my niche. I love it.
What are your students like? Where are they from? Who are they?
The majority of them are Spanish speakers from Latin America. I've got a few from North Africa, West Africa, several Chinese people, and they range from 18 years old to 78 years old.
Oh, right, it's quite an age range.
Yeah.
What are some of the problems and challenges that they confront as immigrants to the United States?
Their biggest challenges are really basic needs challenges.
Like what?
Like health literacy, financial literacy, how to navigate the school system and get their children enrolled in school and also support their children in school when they don't speak English very well. So that's what I try to serve primarily in the classroom is addressing those basic needs and trying to make it fun so that they want to come back and create a community within the classroom so that they can support each other and they're not just relying on me for their language acquisition.
What might they expect to find in your classroom? What happens?
Boy, they would expect to find a serious class at some times, but also a fun, engaging, lots of games kind of class as well. What they should expect to find in all of my classes is community.
Okay.
I try hard to connect them to each other, to get them involved in each other's lives so that they can start depending on each other.
I would imagine a sense of community is what's missing for immigrants in the first place.
Right.
When you come here and you don't feel you're part of a community.
Exactly.
So you build that into the classroom. You foster
Exactly.
that environment.
Right.
And now you said they need support in health literacy, financial literacy,
Right.
getting their kids in school. These are all the things that I think we don't think about.
Right.
How you really need to be well versed in language and know the system. How do you help your students gain all those different kinds of literacies? that they need for that?
It demands a much more multifaceted lesson and a multifaceted curriculum. So you can introduce a vocabulary list of health terms so that they're more familiar when they're talking to the doctor with that sort of English. But it only serves half its purpose if it's only the vocabulary. It also has to be how to ask directions in the hospital and how to ask questions about a medicine, for example. So there's a lot of different language components that go into a lesson that aims to serve a really basic need, like health literacy.
How would they do that? What are some of the aspects of your curriculum that help students acquire that? I imagine just giving them a list of words is not really enough.
Right.
So what do they do?
Right. So what I've done is created a curriculum or a unit that takes a week or two to go through in the class because there's all these different aspects. And there also has to be a component of practice and role play and getting them really engaged and really feeling the language and feeling the scenario with the language. And I've used the We Are New York series to help me do this.
Tell us a little bit about that.
The We Are New York series is a TV series that was produced by the Mayor's Office of Adult Education. And it's, I believe, 12 episodes, 12 or 13 episodes, each of which deal with a different aspect of life for immigrants in New York. So they have a few different episodes that deal with health literacy or diabetes or diet and exercise, things like that. And in the context of the episode, they introduced the phone number 311, which, as most New Yorkers know, is the information line for all things New York and public services and things like that. So I've used that series quite a bit to help me in this because, frankly, it's a great at-home study too for them. They can come to class, they can learn only so much within the period of class time.
What is the period of class time?
It's
How often
2.5
do they come?
hours.
And is it per week? Is it every day?
Right. It's 10
What's it
hours
look
a
like?
week, usually. It's now down to 7.5, excuse me. But most classes for adults are 2.5 hours each, 3 to 4 days a week, depending.
When I was learning language myself, it was such an inefficient way. I mean, we were practicing dialogues, and I really don't think I remember too much of anything. What are the approaches that you use? You said you use the TV show. You say they do role play. Tell us a little bit about what your curriculum might look like.
Okay. Generally speaking, I'll introduce a topic or a grammar point. It depends what we're focusing on. We'll do a little practice with it, writing or speaking or reading, just to cement it a little bit better in their heads. And then we move to a communicative activity where they're asked to use
Tell us what that means. I mean,
I
know what it means, but what do we mean by a communicative
it means
activity?
Speaking, but on the go, on the fly.
In a real way.
Right, exactly.
Unlike those sort of fake dialogues that I had to learn.
Right.
They were fake.
In a real way, right. They're responding to something. They're responding to a stimulus or something. So that could be playing a game where they're competing, because that will always bring up a very natural language use.
What kind of game might they play that would be competitive? I'm just curious.
Yeah, let's see. I'll give them, for example, a cue word. For example, if we were doing health literacy, maybe medicine, and then a team will write down or say a sentence or a question that has to do with that keyword. And then we get a few different answers having to do with that keyword, medicine. And so it might be, why do I need this medicine? When does this medicine expire? Who is prescribing this medicine? Things like that.
So you're giving them the English that they need really to function, to get their way, to make their way around. Can I ask you, is there a variety of levels, or is everyone a real beginner? I mean, how much English do they come in with?
Oh, that's a good question. It really depends on the class. And a lot of classes end up being multi-level. But in an ideal situation,
you have to teach the different levels in one class as well?
In one class, yeah. In an ideal situation, such as OBT at Bushwick has, we have 4 different levels. So all of my students have about the same level coming in. And I would say my advanced class has enough English to be able to hold a basic conversation and to get around. And what they're missing are some of the nuances that will make their life more efficient, get them a job, things like that. The low beginners, the people who are really new in the country, are just struggling for the basics. to go shopping, to get some kind of job, even, you know, a factory job, anything, to make a doctor's appointment, that kind of thing. But more often than not, you're dealing with multi-levels in the same classroom.
Do you think we're doing a good job teaching English to immigrants?
I do. I think New York City really embraces its immigrants. The We Are New York series is one example of that. The We Are New York series took an incredible amount of time and resources to put on, and I think that shows New York's investment in its immigrants. I think, like every sector of education, we're dealing with budget cuts, and that's a really big challenge in continuing our classes and providing the support that our students need. But I guess my job and every teacher's job is to enable them to help themselves, and that's ideally, I mean, that's ultimately what I'm trying to achieve.
Right.
Yeah.
Jim Carney, as you know, was present at the award ceremony, and he had the opportunity to speak to some of your fellow honorees about the ESOL work that they do. So let's take a look and see what they said.
At last month's New York Times reception, 4 ESOL educators were honored. We spoke about their work and their students.
It's a theme-based program, and it's 25 hours a week. It's an adult language immersion program, and it's on many campuses in New York City. And so we work every day based on a theme, and in this particular semester, the theme was building bridges between students and between my students and the larger community of Staten Island. And also included in that is giving them an opportunity to share their stories as immigrants as they build bridges between each other.
Does any particular story of an individual student come to mind that sort of epitomizes the program?
There was a student about a year ago who worked on the project I mentioned, an altered book project, and his was the most moving story. His daughter had been killed in a car crash on Staten Island, and he used the entire experience of this book as a cathartic experience to honor his daughter. And so myself, I would cry, and the other students would cry, and he would cry as he made this book. And eventually it was on display. And so this was a language learning activity, as well as something that meant something tremendous to him in his own personal life. I'll never forget that story.
Riverside Language Program. It's an all-day program. It's 5 hours a day, 5 days a week, for 6 weeks. So it's 150 contact hours. It's a huge commitment on the part of our students who really give up a large portion of their life, in most cases, even the opportunity to work for a while to get intensive English. It's an intensive program, as you can understand.
Who is your typical student that would be coming to the program? Is there a typical student?
Yeah, a typical student. Well, they'd be recent immigrants. We have a limit of 2 years, not more than 2 years. We have students from Central Asia, China, Africa, South America. There's no typical student in terms of nationality. I guess and even in age, I have a 16-year-old now and somebody who's 70.
I actually implement youth leadership into the class as well as entrepreneurship. So most of our immigrant youth, when they first came here, and first thing they came to me, always they mentioned that we need English classes. But if you ask them why they needed English classes, they are wanting English classes because they want to work. So, and then when you look around, they need qualifications, they need certifications to be able to secure a decent job. So therefore, I implemented job skills training into classrooms, and also such as food handling certificate, tourism, tour guide, interpreting, and also some of the students, they are able to take a teaching knowledge test, which is teaching English to another, to teach ESOL themselves also.
One special honor was presented posthumously to Dr. Linda Ann Kuntz for her lifelong commitment to education. The award was accepted by Victoria Badalamenti, the director of the English Language Center at LaGuardia Community College. Can you tell me a little bit about this special award that was given here this evening?
Dr. Linda Ann Kuntz was an adjunct associate professor at the English Language Center at LaGuardia. And she just recently passed away in December, just a few weeks short of her 70th birthday. But she was 70 years young because she had a love for teaching, and that's teaching in capital letters. And And she taught in many of the city universities, at Baruch, at John Jay, at LaGuardia, at NYU. Since 1981, she began her teaching career in the City University. And before that, she had started her teaching back in Africa about 48 years ago. So she really began her teaching career many, many years ago. And she really was a consummate professional.
How do you think she'd feel about this evening if she were here?
This would be the biggest honor for her. I've never met someone as dedicated as Linda.
How does it feel being honored here this evening?
I'm very overjoyed, overwhelmed actually, and also I realized that most of my students that nominated me to be here, and they couldn't be here because they are all working or they are also in college.
It's really, really exciting, and for my daughter especially, my husband who supported me, and all my friends and all the students that are here, it's a tremendous honor.
This is amazing. I was completely unexpected. I hadn't known that I was nominated. It's wonderful for our profession because everybody I work with, all my colleagues, are so good at it and so dedicated to the profession and to the students. And just to get recognition for the profession is wonderful.
Joining us now is Gail August, Professor of ESL and Linguistics at Hostos Community College. Thank you for joining us.
Hello.
Gail. You had a chance to hear what Meg was describing. Tell us in what way, and Meg's students obviously need English for many of the survival aspects of their daily lives. How different is that from the kind of English that students at the college might need?
Well, we kind of build on what you've given them. You've given them communication skills and fluency. And also a little bit, which is really, really important when you go to school, is a sense of empowerment, that they actually are not outsiders in the culture and that they can join the culture and that they can achieve something in their lives. So, but when they come into our college, I think they're a little surprised to find out that actually, besides speaking English and getting to the doctor and getting to the subway and getting their groceries, there's a whole bunch of other skills that they have to learn. And it takes them a long time. We call it academic literacy, but it's really teaching them to write a formal composition. It's teaching them a lot of academic language, academic grammatical structures, and we're trying to take the next, you've given them the first transition from being an immigrant to being able to communicate. We're taking the next transition and being able to use that English in a regular college classroom situation. So we're another transitional mode. And
how do the demands shift? What happens?
They shift a lot. I mean, I was trained, I think, like you, and maybe you too, to teach language and communication. And of course I do that, but there isn't as much time as we would like on this functional language, communication, pronunciation, fluency. We're right into classroom stuff. They're reading. They come back with the reading. We have to talk about what was the main idea, what did it imply, how can you compare it to another reading. And then, of course, our biggest demand is writing, academic writing. And just because you can talk doesn't mean you can put your ideas into a formal composition. This is something that people have to learn, and it's not that natural.
And there's a reading demand also that's quite high. The average textbook, I believe, tests out at a 12th grade reading level. So that means it's a really high jump from reading the things you might need to survive in the city to succeeding in a college English, a college class of any kind.
Reading is a terrible barrier because they don't have enough vocabulary to begin with. Okay, they don't have the academic vocabulary. And when you're reading something and you don't know half of the words in the sentence, you really cannot figure out what it means. So they don't have that. They also don't have a lot of the structures that are used in academic writing and textbooks are not the kind of things we talk, kind of structures we use when we talk. So they're not that familiar with those
And they may be different in their culture.
Right.
That's another difference.
Absolutely.
Our own students, as they progress from elementary to middle, high school, college, are building the language, the discourse of the academic life, and it's the English language that they know. But different cultures have different rhetorical modes, different ways of expressing yourself that you now have to learn.
And all this background information that comes from the culture, the history, the culture, the newspapers, whatever, that people presume you have, but if you don't have it, certain things just don't quite come out the same.
So what happens in your classroom compared to what Meg described happening in her classroom?
Well, first of all, I was going to ask you, how large is your class? Because that really makes a big difference on how you deal with it.
Yeah, up to 24.
Okay, well,
we 14 to 24 is average.
Okay, we have more like 25 to 28 in the class, so it's similar in that sense. There's a lot more assessment in some ways, because what I found is that although they're very motivated to learn, they don't know how to study and they don't know how to teach themselves. So the assessment is not, and I try and make it fun, but it's really to teach them how they have to teach themselves and what they know and what they don't know. So every time they read something, we have a little quiz on it. Every single time. If we don't have a quiz, I'm not too sure they're going to read it, or I'm not too sure they know what they read. So we have a little quiz. So then I correct the quiz. Then we discuss the quiz, and we talk about why did we ask this question, why is this important in the reading, and then we begin discussions on that reading, and then we compare it to the reading before and the reading before.
So you make connections between what they've read.
We're trying to develop analytical skills, comparing, contrasting. We're also trying to help them to bring their own experience. So do you have an example in your own life that is similar to this experience or different? Because I believe all learning has to be connected to what you knew before and who you are. And I also believe that these people have so much to contribute. And when they learn to communicate, they will be able to contribute so much, and they have to know that the things that come from their life are important things.
Meg, in terms of the students that you have, do any of them say that they are planning on going on to college?
Some of them do, yeah. Some of them definitely.
Do you know of any that may have gone on from the program?
I do. I know of a couple, and yeah, and they're successful. They're doing well, and we try in our more advanced classes to introduce some of those reading techniques, finding main ideas and comparing certain things. And I always try to get them to relate whatever they've learned to their own lives. So we do try to introduce some of that, but unfortunately, because of funding restrictions, we aren't allowed to take students who are just one step away from community college.
What are some of the misconceptions you each feel that Americans have about immigrants and language learning?
I think the biggest misconception is that they don't want to learn English. I think that's a terrible misconception, because I know that the students in my class have really struggled to make time for the English class, but that most immigrants are working 10-hour days just to pay their rent or pay their bills or pay their medical, whatever it is. So I would ask those Americans who have this thought that they just don't care to learn.
We do hear that.
Right, yeah, that, would you rather they be fluent or rather they be paying their bills? So I think that's definitely the...
I'd like to build on that, of course. That is the first one. The second misconception is that they don't learn English, because if you look at the statistics, their children are all speaking English. In fact, the real problem is that they're losing the heritage language. The children don't want to speak the native language. They're all learning English. And when my students bring their children to school, I am really, really impressed at how well they speak English and how well they're doing in school. And I would like to say that whatever our students achieve, and I hope they achieve the highest level they can, we actually, by educating them, are educating their children, are helping them to push their children not just into the mainstream, but into the educated stream of our culture. And it's a very
Their parents are role models for them. They're seeing
them. Absolutely. And these are smart people. These are hardworking people. I mean, they don't always seem that way if they can't communicate. They are so smart, and their kids do great.
I want to ask each of you then, we're running out of time. Meg, as you know, was the New York Times ESOL Teacher of the Year. And I want to ask you each, what does it take to be a Teacher of the Year? What makes someone a really great ESOL teacher?
It takes dedication. It takes caring about your students. It takes caring about their community, and not just feeding them knowledge, but empowering them. That's, like Gail said, that's really number one. If they can do it, if you can teach them to do it themselves, that's the best thing a teacher can do.
And what do you say, Gail?
That's a hard one. But I do think it takes a lot of time, and people have to realize because people don't learn things the first time you tell them, or the second time, or the third time. And particularly in our area, they have to write and write and write. We have to correct and correct.
And learning the academic English, really, people don't realize, research shows, takes years.
What did they say, 7 years?
7 years, really.
Yeah, and we only have 2 or 3 years. And they
So you really have to have the patience.
Absolutely. And the dedication, the willingness to give that time.
And to respond to the needs, I think. Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you both so much for joining us today. Again,
Thank
congratulations,
you,
Meg
Thank you.
Frost, Gail August, Hostos Community College. Thank you for joining us. And please don't go away. We'll be right back with our Ed Bites.
We'd like to hear from you. If you have any suggestions or comments, drop us an email at our email address.
And now for this edition of Ed Bites.
It seems that if professors are more liberal than the average citizen, there might be some explanations. New research finds that academics form their political views early in life. There are also demographic and personal characteristics that might explain why professors are more liberal. They are more likely, for example, to have higher levels of education and to experience a disparity between their incomes and levels of education. And they often are either non-religious, Jewish, or members of a faith that is not theologically conservative. They also have a high tolerance for controversial ideas. These are a few of the factors that might explain some of the political differences between academics and others.
Will the No Child Left Behind Act really be left behind? Education policy analysts are concerned that the Obama administration's new policy guidelines are too reminiscent of NCLB, particularly their continued focus on high-stakes testing. Critics might be pleased that the new guidelines would allow states to use subjects other than reading and math to gauge their success. But overall, analysts see a pass-fail mentality they hoped would be eliminated.
What do students want from education technology? The Speak Up survey revealed that students want mobile learning. Nearly a third said that they carry smartphones and want to use them for education. Students also want to replace their traditional textbooks with interactive online learning environments that include educational games and links to experts and websites. And all that should be downloaded to their phones.
There is more confirmation that the new gender gap in schools refers to boys, not girls. A report from the Center on Education Policy confirms that boys have fallen behind in reading in every state, in elementary, middle, and the high school. Why are boys failing? One theory claims that boys are weaker in verbal skills in a world that has only gotten more verbal. Educators recommend encouraging boys to read anything they like, including books and stories about boxers, wrestlers, and even explosions. Check out the website guysread.com to see a list of books that boys might like to read.
Well, that does it for this edition of EdCast.
Until next time, class dismissed.
EdCast is made possible in part by contributions from
Lesh & Lesh, your Bronx attorneys.